Hey, what's up everybody? I just wanted to create a tutorial on how I like to think of Figma components and then translating that over to React using Tailwind CSS. And in front of me, as you'll see here, I got a blank Figma canvas, and what we're going to be doing is starting off with a button and then showing how I like to think of the Figma auto layout groups. In comparison to something like Flexbox and using Flex with Tailwind and whatnot as well. So to get started, we are going to create a button component, and to do that, the first thing we're going to do is actually create put some text on the page here, which not like that, which we shall just put as click me, like so. And then what we're going to do is to press Shift A to turn that into an auto layout group. Now what that does is, you see up here, it turns it into a frame in Figma, but over here on the right hand side you will also see the auto layout properties as well, and this includes things like horizontal gaps, padding, horizontal padding rather, and vertical padding as well as the alignment properties, which you can think of in terms of Flexbox as sort of your align item center, your justify contents and things like that. But to get started, let's zoom in on this button component, which we'll just zoom up here. Now, when you're building your components in React, you'll obviously have different properties and whatnot. So to do that, if you move on, if we first of all turn this into a component using the shortcut up here, or by pressing Control Alt and K, you'll see it's now highlighted all in purple, and also over here purple as well. Now what we'll do is change this from frame 1 to button component, like so, and then we're going to move on over to the right here to where it says properties, and the first thing we're going to do is click this plus icon here, and we're going to create a text property. Now this text property we're going to leave as name text, and the value for it is going to be I don't know, click me, like so, and then create property. The next thing you need to do once you've done that is pop on down to where it says, so if we hover over this again, we go to the text object, or text layer rather, and move on over here, and where you have your text properties here, underneath you'll see a little content or input field that says click me, which is the same as our text over there, and an arrow icon over here which just says apply text property. Now when you click this, we'll see the property which we created above. We'll click that. Now what that allows us to do is every time we create one of these, our new button component, so if we go to our resources and we grab a button when Figma decides to load, of course, button component like so, and we drag that in here. Every time we now use this button component, on the right here we should have the underneath the button component properties, we can now change, we now have our text property, which we can change click me to, like so, and press enter, and you can see this update. So you've now essentially created a reusable component. However, it's a bit boring at the moment, so let's fix that. The first thing we'll do is go over to our component, which is our auto layout group, and we're going to pop down onto our fill and just give it any old color. So let's just say green. In fact, let's not do that. Let's pop on over to Tailwind and grab one of their colors. So if we search for colors, where is it? Customizing colors, default color palette, here we go. And let's just grab this blue color here, which is copied. We pop on over to Figma, and we shall just pop on over here and paste that in. And just to note, that is the blue 500 color there, which I think, yep, just double check. No, it wasn't blue 500 color. That's the blue 500 color. The next thing we'll do is click on this click me text layer here, and we shall change the color of the text just to be white, like so. There we go. Next thing we'll do, just to make this look a little bit better, is move on over to our border radius here, and we'll leave all of that, and we'll just change this to 8 just to round it off a little bit. And what I like to do is make sure that whatever the vertical padding is, the horizontal padding is actually double that. So what I'll do is change this to something like 6 and make the horizontal padding 12, like so. So it just gives it that nice buttony look. In fact, I'm going to change this to 4, like so, over here. So on the right here, you can think of these as your alignment properties using CSS and Flexbox. Now, in what I actually have, so what we have here is a button with some padding, and this we can actually set to 0, seeing as there is there's nothing else we're sticking inside this button for now. Now what I have in my code editor just over here is a very simple next app, as it's the quickest way really to get started with React and Tailwind, as the new create next app stuff actually comes with Tailwind. And if I go on over to our page and go over to, and we'll open up this as well on the left hand side, so let me just pop this over here, and our code, not that one, and our code over here as well. So let me just move this over to the right. There we go. And what we'll do is create a new folder inside source, like so, and we'll call this components. And inside here we'll create a file, and we'll call it button.tsx. And you've probably all seen this before, but just to go over it, we'll do an export default function of button. In fact, there we go. It's almost as if a Copilot knows exactly what I'm trying to do, but there we go. And in here, if you now pop over to Figma, you will see, so if we find our button again and we click on the component, what we essentially want to do is match up the padding, the horizontal padding, vertical padding, and all of the different properties that we got here. So we probably won't be needing Flex for such a simple thing as this, but what we'll be doing is we'll ignore the property for now and just hard code some values. So the first thing we'll do is class name, and remember we nicked the color from here, which was blue 500. So we'll pop in here and we'll say BG blue 500, like so. The next thing we'll do is put a text of white, and let me just make sure this is all wrapping. There we go. And also, if we have a look at our text property here, we'll see that we're using inter, which is also the default typeface used by TailwindCSS, so that's all fine. So we'll leave that as it is for now. But obviously, if you were building something and there was a different font typeface there, you'd want to make sure that's applied in your Tailwind config. But if we pop over here, we'll notice that that is actually set to a font size of 12, which I don't actually like, so we're going to pump that up to 16, which does then actually ruin our padding constraints and things like that. So let me just make sure that that's all plain ball. We don't want that, we want HUD contents. There we go. So one of the things you do want to make sure is when you're using the auto layout stuff, you want to set this to HUD so that it acts a little bit more like a Flex container, as if you were using it over here. So you can see now that it's HUD, or sorry, the horizontal and the vertical are set to HUD. They actually, the padding and everything else responds quite nicely to the to the content within the element itself within the auto layout group. So thinking more like a button element, which is actually an inline element, it's going to expand right and take into, if you're using box size, border box size or something like that, it's all going to expand to the content that's within it, right? So whereas if it's similar to CSS, you actually set a fixed width on this, the text is going to start stretching over the end of the element and things like that. So in order to mimic the default behavior of the browser in CSS, you want to set that to hug and have this in auto layout group and whatnot as well. So next thing we'll do, so we've got that set to 16, which will be the default font size for the browser, and we've got blue 500, text white. The next couple of things we're going to do are sort out the padding. Now in VS Code, if you've actually got the Tailwind CSS extension installed, you will actually get some pretty decent autocomplete. So if we do px and look at the autocomplete, we want to look for the one for horizontal padding, which is px, which is 12, so that's px3. And for the vertical padding, we're just going to do py, and again we got our autocomplete here, and we're looking for 6. And it looks like there actually isn't a 6, but we can probably do 1.5, I think. Yeah, 1.5, which will be 6 pixels. Now, next thing we'll do we'll pop over to our page, and we're just going to pop our button component in like so. There we go, and we'll see it on the page here. Now the couple of things here that we're missing are the rounded corners. So if we just pop over to our button component again, and we type rounded, and I think we want rounded medium. In fact, it looks like we don't have a rounded of 4 in by default. So there's two ways we can actually get around this. The first way is by using Tailwind arbitrary values. So if you're only going to be using this every so often, you can put a dash, then the square brackets here, and that will allow you to put some arbitrary values in like so. So by doing that, rounded 4 pixels will pop over here. You can now see the button has got its rounded corners. However, if you're going to be using that quite often, what I would recommend you do is, if we go into documentation and we go to look for the rounded property when Tailwind catches up with us, and we click on that, and we want to look down to customizing the theme, and we can see here theme, border radius, and we got a bunch of options here. So what we'll do, mimicking this, if we pop on over to the tailwind config.ts and we go in here, we go to theme and we create a new option of border radius like so, and we open that up. Then what we can do is create, you can call this whatever you want, but we're just going to call this custom, but we'll do it in lowercase like so, and we're just going to set that to, I think we had it at 6 pixels. Did we have it? No, we actually had it at 4. There's probably already a value for that, but let's set that to 4 pixels like so, and we'll just put a comment there like that. And then if we pop back over to our button component, and instead of doing the arbitrary value like so, if we do this and we click custom, you can actually see that Tailwind is now cleverly bringing in the auto completions for our custom values. So we'd see rounded custom there, and then we got all the other different values as well. So border radius top left 4 pixels, but we just want to put all of them on like so. As you can see, that now matches our Figma design, which is quite handy. Now, next thing we do is on our button, we do have a custom property of text. Now in order to get this, the first thing I'll do, and this is just a preference, you can do this in line in a parenthesis if you want, but I'm going to add a type of button props like so, and that is going to have a property of text, which will be a string. And in here we'll deconstruct or destructure rather the text property of here, and that's going to be, and the object itself that we're destructuring is going to be of type button props like so. Next thing we can do is actually call text in here like so. Now when we go to our page.tsx, because this is a required property of the button component, we can now put text and we can change that to click me like so. And if we now go over to our thing, we can see nothing's changed, but if we were to go over here and say, and just change that to click, you can see that now auto updates as per this. The other way you can do this, and this will be quite handy if you expect to put quite a lot of elements within inside your button. Maybe you want to put icons and things like that in there. Is if you go on to your button component again, and instead of having a text property, you put a you change this to children, and we change this to children as well, and we change this to children, and then pop over here. We can use the React node property there, and we'll pop over here, and basically this will now complain, well at the moment it's complaining it's got no corresponding closing tag, but it will now say it's missing the children property, which all that means is it's expecting something to go within the middle here. And we'll change that to click me again, save that, and you can see it all updates here. Now that is slightly different to your properties here, so it will depend on what how you set up your components and things like that, and how closely you want to match what you've got within your design system. But that's the basic gist of it. Now the next thing we're going to do is, if I full screen this again, is let's say for example we have a button group. So what we'll do is we'll move our button component up here out of the way, and what we'll do is we'll grab a couple more buttons like so, and what we'll do is go over here, and we're going to change the first one to be let's change that to be primary button like so. Move that over, and for this next one we'll call it secondary button. Now let's say you have a button group, and we'll highlight this like so. What we'll do is we'll highlight this and we'll turn this into a layout group again by pressing Shift A. So that now means, so as you can see up here, if we drag this underneath in the order that everything's been created, and if we change this to be button group like so, you can see over here the auto layout options, and you can see there's a horizontal gap between items of 49, which is just what was there when we created. Now once everything's an auto layout group, you'll see you have lots of handy tools, like you'll be able to drag and drop this, and you can see it updated on the right there as well. You have alignment options and all sorts of things as well. Now you can change the auto layout so that there is so that it's actually vertical, and then if we drag this up and down, lots of things like that. Now let's change this to a button group, and then let's just say we want 16 pixel gap between them, which in our case will be 1 rem, and a Tailwind class I think is just going to be gap 4. So now that we've got that, what we'll do is, and just to continue on with why layout groups are useful, if we now pop over here, we grab this second button and we control copy, control paste. We can see that each one now gets added into this layout group, and if I pop over to the last one just so that we can identify which buttons are which, and we grab this third button like so, you can now see everything sort of lined up like so. And also what's quite handy is we can then rearrange these and they'll sort of stick within that layout, auto layout group, very similar to say sort of flexbots and things like that. But let's put these all back to the way they should be, like so. And we'll make this a component as well, so that if we ever want to reuse it, we can. And we'll just stick that under here. Now, if we pop on over to our code editor, which in this is VS Code, and we pop over to components, and we click new file, we can say button group.tsx, like so. And all we're going to do is, if you think about this, right, this is essentially, and this is what I was saying at the start of the video, where I like to think of auto layouts in Figma similar to Flexbox. So to get started, first thing we'll do is create an export default function of button group, like so. In fact, it's trying to be clever, so let's hide the sidebar there, and we're just going to create a type. Oh, not all in caps. Type button group props, like so. Which is using that React Node class there as well. And what you can see here is this taking a children. So in our case, that's going to be our different buttons, but actually you could probably use this for anything. But semantically and within your design system, this will start to make sense as you're building stuff out. And then in here, you've got a flex row, and then this is using space. However, I'm going to swap this out to gap, and I'm going to change that to gap 4. Now, if you're using Tailwind autocompletion, you see here 1 rem, which is 16 pixels, which is similar to what we had in our Figma component or Figma design screen over on the left there. Now, if I click that, we click save. And we go over to our button, not our button component, sorry, our page. What I'm going to do is create a div here just to make sure this is all separated out, and I'm going to change this to button group, like so. And then in here, I'm going to put a bunch of buttons, and we're just going to change this to first button, second button, and third button, just so we see what we're doing. Now what we'll do is we'll open up the next app, and you can see, let me just space this out a bit, MT4. You can see here that this very closely matches our design system that we're building, where we have a button group and each one is separated by 16 pixels, which in our case is 1 rem. Now if I pop over to Figma, and let's say for example this ever changes and we say this actually is going to be separated by 10 pixels, you can now pop on over to your button group component, for example, and change that to 2.5, which is 10 pixels, as you can see there, and everything then will update. And you can see from doing things like this that the you can start to really build out a design system, and matching very closely to what everything's been done. Now move on to a more complicated example. Let me just full screen this. Let's say you are building a header navigation bar. So to do that, what we'll do is we'll start off by creating a site logo. This is going to be nothing special. We'll call this site logo, like so, and we'll just grab all of that and we'll just switch that to bold, like so. Next thing we'll do is we'll say we want some navigation items, so we'll just grab some text and we'll say home and then we'll just copy this out like so a few times, and we'll just say home, about, services, and what shall we say, contact, like so, like that. Then what we'll do is we'll make the site logo a bit bigger, so we'll say 32 pixels, and then we'll leave these and we'll change them from bold to I don't know, just medium. In fact, we'll do that for all of them, so we'll change that to medium, like so. And then the next thing we'll do is we'll have a button, so we'll grab our button component like that, and we'll just grab this, and we'll just to emphasize a point, we'll make all of this completely wonky, and then I'm going to change the text on that button to be log in, like so. Yeah, let's start with that. So again, I like to make sure that when I'm building sort of designing out a website or UI using Figma, I like to think of all of the of things similar to how I would think of things in, say, HTML and things like that. So I'm going to drag all of this off, and we're going to have our desktop here. And the first thing I want to do is drag all of this, or take all of this, and turn it into an auto layout component. Now, as you can see here, it's immediately set everything to be almost like a flexbox, and you see everything sort of going along this way. And if you look over here, you can sort of see how everything's aligned to the bottom left. What we're going to do is change that to align everything to center. You can see everything already is sort of aligned center, and also on top of that, it's everything's currently wrapping. You can see that here using the, where this wrap icon is. Now, if you think that's similar to sort of flex wrap, but when we're building a header, that's probably not what we're looking for. So first things first, let me just switch this to be header bar, and then we're going to change this to be a horizontal layout like so. Next thing, you can sort of see how at the moment this will be that weird behavior you get in Flex where the container is too small, but Flex wrap is turned off, so everything is now flowing outside the container, which can sort of lead to some really dodgy CSS and errors and things like that, where the page doesn't look quite right. So what we're going to do is change this from fixed to HUD content, which is very similar to doing something like width 100%. But what I will say is this doesn't quite, so first thing first, that's really annoying me. Let's put our button component at the end there. Okay, so first things first, when we're, you'd have to think this will be, your navigation links here will actually probably be inside like a nav, element or something like that. So if we highlight all of those and we turn those again into another auto layout, we change that to be nav like so, and then what we'll do is I'm going to actually wrap everything inside here inside another auto layout group and call that container, which is very similar to the Tailwind class, which will sort of mimic the behavior we'll set up in a minute when we switch back over to the code of having a container within a header element. Or, well, it won't be a container element, it will be a div with a class of container. So we'll do that there. Now, so if we switch on back over to Tailwind and we have a look at the container class that they have set up for us, once it all loads and we pop on over here, you'll see that the sort of max widths and everything else that's set up mimic your different screen sizes. So the max width here is 1536. So if we pop over to Figma, we just check what the max size of our desktop here. So the max size of our desktop frame is 1440. So let's choose a smaller one just for this, which is going to be 1280. If we grab our inner container, which is this one here, and we set over here, we're going to set a max width of 1280 pixels, and instead of HUD, which is basically going to make sure it always, you know, the width of the width of the content of the auto layout is going to HUD the contents of the elements inside it. We're going to change that to be filled container, and then if we grab our header bar and we drag this to the top of the site where you know it would be, and we actually expand that out to fill the page like so, you can see how, if we just grab that there, you can sort of see how the inner container now, similar to how a website, you know, a container, a Tailwind container would work, actually keeps everything central and of a max width of 1280 pixels there. And again, this is very similar to how you would actually construct a site using Tailwind and CSS and things like that. Now, again, using this, what I don't like is how the nav items are over there. Well, I mean, it's fine, but for this example, I actually want to make sure our nav items are in the center. So in order to do that, I'm going to grab this, and instead of HUD, I'm going to tell it to fill the container, which I would describe this as similar to being something like Flex Grow. And then we're going to grab our button component. I'm actually going to put this inside another auto layout. I'm going to change this to be header right, like so. And I'm going to grab our site logo. I'm going to put that in another auto layout container and change this to be header left, like so. And we'll grab our header left, we tell it to fill, like so, and we're also going to grab our header right, and we're going to tell that to fill. And you can now sort of see how everything's sort of trying to fill the space, which, if you know Flex Grow, is basically the same behavior. But what we have noticed is our button component is now over here, and the reason for that is if we have a look at the bounding box, you can see it's now aligned itself to the center of that bounding box. So we're going to highlight that, we're going to move on over to our alignment and just stick that so it's aligned to the right, like so. And now we have the sort of design sort of laid out where everything's aligned to the center. We have our logo on the left, our navigation items in the middle, and our button on the right over there. And if you have a look, you can sort of see how everything sort of lays out, very similar to sort of a HTML sort of layout as you would be building it now. If we pop on over to our code editor and we just pop on over here, we're going to create a new file in here, and I'm just going to call this site, or we'll call this header logo.tsx, and in here we'll put export default header, nope, we want a capital, header logo, like so, no, like that, export default function rather, header logo like that, and in here we're just going to return a next link component like so, and inside here we're just going to put call this site logo, similar to what we've got in our Figma file, and we'll put link like so, like that, and we see that links back there. We'll just put a class name here, and if we look back at this, go to our header left, go to our site logo, and in here we'll see it's bold and it's 32 pixels. So if we go back over to our code, we say font bold like so, and text and I believe it's going to be 2XL. Nope. So again, using the Tailwind autocomplete from VS Code, if we just pop on over here, you can actually see there is no 32 pixels. So again, as I think this is going to be a site logo and probably not something we reuse very often, we're actually just going to pop in here and put 2 rem. 1 rem being 16 pixels, so 2 rems is going to be 32 pixels. And the reason we use rem is because it scales off of the root font size of the browser, so everything scales nicely. So if we set that like so, I believe that's all we need for this component. The next component we need is going to be our nav items here. So we'll pop here and we'll pop on over to our components. We'll click in here, we'll say nav or header nav item.tsx, and in here we're going to export default function header nav item. In fact, that works quite nicely, and let's just see if Copilot can figure this out for us. So we'll change this to href in here. Yeah, so it's still looking at the old sort of way of doing things in Next for links, and we'll just stick that like that, like so, and we'll just grab this and we'll import next link like so, and you'd see it's whinging here. So what we'll do is create a type of header nav item props and grab all of that and then just stick this here like so. We'll make that wrap like that. Just hide that so you can sort of see everything up. Instead of that, it needs to be wrapped in parentheses so that everything is pulled through. Right, so the next component we're actually going to work on is going to be our header nav bar. Or well, not the header nav bar, but the header nav group. So if we pop into our components and we type in header nav, then we'll do .tsx, and we'll in here we'll put export default function of header nav like so, and open this up. Now in here we are actually going to take a type of header nav props, and it's just going to take in some children. And this is very similar to how we did our button group. However, we'll stick everything in there, and what we'll do is flex gap 2.5 Copilot has suggested, but let's have a look at what we actually set up for our nav here. So we pop to our nav element in here, and we'll just look over here, and 37 is a strange number, so I think we'll just knock that down to 36 like so, and then we'll pop on over to here and we'll just change this to be well, it won't be that, it's so 36 is gap 9 like so. Next thing we want, if we actually have a look at that, is we'll change this to we'll leave that fill container there, and then because that's going to be fill, you'll see there's gaps either side here. So what we'll do is pop on this, and we're going to set this to grow like so, and then we are, so that's that fill flex grow. You can sort of see here again, just to go back quickly remind you how we've got that set to fill, which is similar to flex grow as I was talking about. And we'll pop in here and we got that to grow. We're going to set this to be items center as well, and we're going to set this to justify content center like so as well. Yeah, I think that should do that quite nicely. What we'll do is go back over to our header nav item, and we'll just make sure that our header nav items match up with what we've got set. So we'll pop in here, 16 pixels medium. Now, not sure what medium is set to, but if we pop in here, we'll do class name, and we'll do font, and let's just have a look. Yeah, so font medium, which matches up perfectly as well. There we go. Okay, so next, so we've got all of our different components and pieces and everything else set up. We've got our header logo, we've got our nav item, we've got our header nav, and we've got our button as well. So next thing we'll do is if I pull this open, and we're just going to create a new component of header.tsx, and we'll export default function header like so. And then we'll just grab this and we'll remove all of those for a second and close that like so, and then we're going to pull that open like that, and then we're just going to whack this to the side like that, and then we'll just get rid of all the classes within there. Now within here, if we pop them over to Figma again, you'll see I laid this out. So we've got our header bar and we've got a container within that. So we'll close this like so. And what I actually want to do to match this up a little bit closer is if I drag this to the top of the page, you can see this is a auto layout component. First thing I actually want to do is stick on here some padding. So if we say that's going to be vertical padding 16 pixels like so. The next thing I want to do is make sure our inner container here actually has some horizontal padding of 4 pixels, well we'll say 16 pixels, which will be 1 rem. That will make sure that even if so if I just open full screen this again, even if the desktop say this is a much smaller screen and we grab our header component and we drag this in, you can sort of see, ignoring the fact that everything's overlapping, there is some padding either side of the element like so, which mimics how a container would work. So the next thing I want to do, pop over to here, we'll say container, and here so we want to pop over to extending theme, and we want to see where it says theme container center true. So let's pop over to here. We'll open our Tailwind config.ts, and under theme we're going to open this up and go to container like that. I'm going to set this to center true, and the next one we want is padding 1 rem, which again is going to end up being 16 pixels at the base font size. Now if we open up Figma again, and we're just going to stick this over to the left, our code editor here, and we'll pop to our header component. Now in here we'll stick a container like I said. We're also going to open up our header, and like we put on, we're going to put py16, which will give us not 16, sorry, 4, which will give us that 16 pixels top and bottom, and as you can see there it's 1 rem 16 pixels. That's how it translates. And then we've got our container where we've set it to be centered, which does our margin right and margin left auto, and also padding either side of 1 rem and a width of 100%. You can also see here, if you look down with the different media queries, the min widths and everything else, and it goes up to 1536, but we're designing on a slightly smaller screen, so we're actually only going up to 1280 pixels there. Cool. Which also matches the max width which we stuck on the container. If we look, whereabouts was it? Here, which is our max width. Cool. So if we pop this open again, I'll keep that open for the time being. And next thing we'd want to do is create, if we're looking in here, got header left, a nav section, and header right. So the next thing we'll do is create a div. In here we're going to import our site logo like so. Oh, let's have a look what we called it. Or header logo, that's what we called it. Like so. I'm just going to put a class name of grow on that to match what we've done over here. And in the middle here, we're going to pull in our header nav, and our header nav already has, if we pop back onto this, our header nav already has the grow property on it and a bunch of other stuff. So we just now pop on over to our header again. Now this is throwing an error because it's expecting children. Now what we'll do is we'll pull in I think we called it header nav item, like so, and that takes a href and some text, and we're just going to go with whatever Copilot thinks. Home, about, services, I think that's what we have. Home, about, services and contact, yep. Like so. And the next thing we'll do is do our header right bit, so we'll do .grow again, but this time if we have a look on this here for our header right, see we've actually got everything justifying to the right. So what I'll do is flex justify end, and we're also going to pop on here because and make this flex matching our auto layout group, and we'll say items center, like so, again matching what we got over there. And then in here we are just going to put our button like that and put sign in, like so. So we'll pop over to our page.tsx, or actually we'll pop over to our layout, and inside our body we're just going to put header from our component there, like so. Now if we pop over to our create next app, see our site logo here. In fact, let's full screen this so we can have a better look. And if we open up our responsive menu, you can sort of see now how that is responsive. Everything works, and it is exactly as we've designed it, using the auto layout groups as well.